All right, I think we are on and ready to go. I'm going to call this meeting of the Board of Regents of the Del Mar College District to order at 8:30 a.m. It is Thursday, November 18th, 2021, and we are meeting in our board retreat workshop. So I'm going to establish a quorum. Let's see, Dr. Adami will be arriving shortly. Ms. Averett? Here. Mr. Bennett? Here. Mr. Garza? Here. Ms. Hutchison? Here. Dr. Kelly? Dr. Kelly. I always want to give you a promotion. Mr. Kelly. Dr. Turner? Here. Dr. Villarreal?
Here.
I'm Carol Scott. We have a quorum and can conduct business. Let's see. Our flag is behind us. Ms. Hutchison, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we will read our Del Mar College vision statement, which is on your agenda. Del Mar College will be the premier choice for life-changing educational opportunities provided by responsive, innovative faculty and staff who empower students to improve local and global communities. We are joined today by our facilitator, Dr. Brad Ebersol from the Association of Community College Trustees. I want to remind everyone that we do need to use our microphones when we are speaking, and there is the little button to the right that says speak, and it'll turn on, and push it when you're ready to stop speaking, and it'll turn off. Dr. Adami has arrived, so we have a full house. Dr. Ebersol, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Well, good morning. Good morning. Welcome back from last evening. It was really a pleasure to get to know everybody, and I think for us to get to know one another as well. So that was very special. Everybody has their folders? Everybody has a folder that they got? All right. On the left should be an outline and worksheets. All right? And if there's not, there you go. Those are worksheets, and those are worksheets, and then nope. No, don't go through all that. This is what I thought. That's right. All right.
I have the agenda right here.
Yeah, okay. That is not it.
Okay.
All right. Nope. All right, Natalie, do we have the agendas? No, those are worksheets. See, what we wanted is on the left would be the agenda and the worksheets behind it. So here comes the agenda. All right. That's the agenda. That's the agenda. Right? Good. You got that. Okay. Those are worksheets, and here is your agenda. You got it, ma'am. Agenda. All right. Oh, yeah, that's the agenda, right. And then there should be a set of worksheets. These. All right. And this is worksheet 1. All right. Okay. All right. Doing all right, Mark? Okay. So for the structure for this retreat, then, the agenda you can put to the side. That just keeps track of where we're going and what we're doing. The worksheets, there's about 7, and I just keep those together because we'll work our way through the worksheets as we do the various pieces that we're working on. Then there's a lot of other supporting material that put in the envelope too, and as we need, we'll pull that up as we get to those pieces. So that's just generally how we'll be structured. All right. So if we look at the agenda very quickly, just as a reminder for everyone too, the purpose of the retreat. And we spoke a little bit about it last night, but primarily I just said you've had good years of stability and effectiveness. However, half the board is somewhat new or appointed or elected. And with that dynamic, the board wisely decided that a retreat designed to enhance the working relationship of the board and review and focus on identified areas would serve to ensure its continued effectiveness in the future. So the idea is some of you are new and about being on the board here, and some have been on for a while, but it's that nice dynamic that makes this retreat valuable. Then we said these are the goals. And as Covey says, begin with the end in mind. So these are kind of our goals for what we decide to do. And number one was we're going to take time for the board to know one another on a more personal basis with a focus on what each regent brings as a strength to the board and overall interest in serving in the role. Last night, it exceeded my thoughts of what we were going to do with that. So I thought, I'll see how they want. But as I was talking to somebody, as we all said, tell us a little bit about yourself, we learned a lot. And the notion is that as you learn about each other, the more you know about each other, the stronger you can be as a board. But then as Susan said, what do we do with it then? But at least we know this is where we're going to be starting. Then our second goal that we're working on, review and assess characteristics of an effective Board of Regents and responsibilities for board engagement by each individual. So part of that is, I have a little worksheet, one of those worksheets when we get to it, and you'll be looking at that and responding to that as well. But the notion here is some are new, so some of that is kind of new thoughts and new ideas, where others have been around for a while. They can share their thoughts and ideas, and maybe they hear different things. Then we'll go to the ACCT Board Self-Assessment results related to board strengths and areas for attention. And I think we'll go into an executive session at that point, and I guess you go into this next room, or do we stay here? Something, okay. But Augie gave everyone a copy of that, and we'll walk through it and see what it tells us and give some response to that. Then identify the perceived future for the Corpus Christi region in 3 to 5 years and the needed response for Del Mar College. So a major focus for a board. You represent the community, you represent this region, you have your finger on the pulse of life here and the activities that are going on. So what is your concepts of the future? And we're going to take some time to think about what's happening in Corpus Christi and then what the college can do to respond to that. And as I mentioned, it's not developing a strategic plan, but it's a big picture piece of what a board sees where this college is going, which is a major part of what you're doing. So that's what we'll do today. And Friday, we'll focus on some specific topics that are identified in number 5. We'll focus on board goals as well, and we'll talk about just your general thoughts of being a high, a medium, a low-performing board, and what you might do better in that regard. So that's where we're going. And this came about largely from conversation with Carol and Mark and all of you as well about what you hope this retreat would be. So there you go. That's what we're working on. So last night, was that first piece. And so let me just reflect a second on that. There were a lot of powerful statements about you individually and who you are and how you got to this particular point. Some were just amazing, as we know. And Rudy talked about having persevered, and Bill did, and Ed said starting from his academic life wasn't the strongest, but he got it going and made it happen. And Susan did, and Carol, and Laurie's is a movie waiting to happen. There's a script that has to come out of that. So if you want, you get a screenwriter, you got a story to sell in that one. But it was really very fascinating with all that. And what I heard a lot was there's a real strong passion and understanding of the value of education. And that was one of the biggest pieces that I heard, that all of you recognize that. And somehow in that journey of yours, you really used that value to make it happen. You said in education, And then it sounds like you're passing that along as well to children and children's children and others as well. But that was a strong piece of what we heard. The other was a perseverance. And I mentioned that because earlier I said it when I referenced Mark, because he sees our students, and we feel like sometimes we lose too many because they step out for various reasons. They have work, they have family, they have children, they have all kinds of things going on in their lives. And when they do, it just kind of breaks our heart that, you're moving along, so don't quit now. But I forget which one was it, maybe Rudy or somebody, that just kept going, despite all the challenges that they faced, and certainly Laurie in an amazing way about how it just didn't quit and just kept moving ahead. And so, as a board, you're not in direct contact with students, but you set policy. And you share ideas and you share thoughts with Mark and others. And that's one of the big ones that sounds like you have that in you, that perseverance. And our students need that. Our students just need that. We have the students that have several children and are trying to balance a job and are trying to come to school at the same time. And it's just enormously challenging for them. And but to help in finding ways that the college can encourage them to persevere is interesting. The other piece that I heard is your knowledge about Corpus Christi, and relating that to the mission of the college. So, I don't know Corpus Christi. So when I came from the Omni Hotel this morning, the lady in the phone drove me down North Shore Drive, and then in a little bit, some residential areas, and they all look very, very nice. And it all looked very pleasant and very pretty. So that's the way I came down. But I was hearing the statements, somebody representing a district. Yeah. Yeah, right. What? Yeah, all right. But very much, so there's that, I don't know if that's the right example, but there's that section that I saw today, but you just go a couple blocks and there's a very different population and a very different section of Corpus Christi. I heard Corpus Christi is somebody's second lowest in educational attainment or something along that lines, and I was surprised to hear that. Yeah, so I was surprised to hear that in that regard. And then I heard about the history of the economics where, when oil was a bust, the town followed it, and at the same time. But then when they got stronger, then some more money comes into the community, and it bounces with that, has those ups and downs. But the point is, the community, and you've been here a long time for the most part, and the districts and the areas that are where people are, and the economy as well. And that's what Del Mar does. That's what community colleges do. I mean, those are the factors that we need to be aware of in terms of meeting our mission in that way. So, and then the one that that really I had to hear and learn a little bit more, and Libby brought it up, was that this board, as a body, as a collective group of people, has suffered loss, and it's not to be ignored in some ways. So when I heard that last night, and even in the common phrase, the elephant in the room, for me, I didn't know. I didn't see the elephant, but if the elephant's in the room, that there's been some loss as well on the board, and then loss within your families. Libby pointed out, let's not forget that, and Carol said too, yeah, let's not forget that. And the one individual that you was on this board that you miss impacts that in a lot of ways. So during this retreat, there'll be some places where, for you as a board, we can think about that maybe in a little different way, and see if there's some strategies and thoughts or whatever to make sure that you're dealing with that effectively, so it helps you in your effectiveness is what we'll do. So those are some of the takeaways that I had from last night. Is there anything else that anybody that I might have missed? Anything else? So Linda, we're going to give you a chance. You know, yeah, I'll just tell you what we did. We just gave a little history of, you know, who we are, how we got here, and why we're on this board is pretty much what it is. So we're going to let you share that with us.
Well, thank you and good morning. It's really good to be here. It really is good to be here. First of all, I want to apologize. You see, I think when you commit to a board, whatever board it is, that you should show up. You should be here. You should be attentive. And I missed the last board meeting. Sometimes life gets in the way, right? So my intent has always been to always be present and always be here. But I had a little, my mom has been in the hospital, so, and she's still in the hospital, but she's doing better, so that's a good thing. That's what kept me away. But last night, I wanted to be with you as I was eating my peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But as you know, and I talked with Regent Scott, I asked her, you know, what her thoughts were, and we really decided that as far as last night, without a mask and everything, since I've been exposed, but I've tested negative twice, and my grandson's doing well. He doesn't even, he said, I thought that COVID was really bad. I said, it is. I said, but you, because he's still playing and everything, so that's a good sign. But it sounds like I missed a wonderful dinner, and especially to get to know you, which I really hate missing, because you really just recently got to know who I was because you interviewed me. So I know you know what I'm about and who I'm about. As you know, Corpus Christi means the world to me. I was born and raised here. All of my work has been in South Texas. I've lived most of my life in Corpus Christi, but I lived a little while in Kingsville when I met my husband, raised our son, and then we moved back. Anybody who knows me would tell you automatically, because I think that I'm an open book, and I think I'm very transparent. People would tell you, if you said, well, tell me about Linda, they'd say, oh my God, she loves education, or she loves being Carlos's mom, she loves her church. So I think sometimes I feel so badly for people who weren't able to pinpoint their passions. They sort of go about life just every day, waking up, the same thing and so forth. I don't know if it was just being blessed or what it was, but I just knew from an early age what were the things that meant the most to me. And when people asked me when I was a little girl what I wanted to be, I said, I want to be a wife. I wanted to be married. So family, being a mom and being a wife is really, that's a huge priority for me. My religion, Catholicism, and my spirituality is another passion of mine. And then right there along with it is education, is being a teacher. And the last 44 years, I've been involved with school districts and universities, and it's just a great, I think it's more of a reward for me than anything. It's just very rewarding to see kids. I love children, and that's who I am. Y'all know who I am. I'm here primarily because I love Corpus Christi. I love Del Mar. I love serving. And I believe, like everybody else and that you mentioned, that education really is that key to leading children and people to the future of having a better life, living a better life, and having a stronger community. And that's who I am. Do you have any questions or?
So what do you bring to the board?
What do I
What do
bring
you
to the
think
board?
you know, when you're at this table, what do you think you most have to offer?
I think I have a very pure agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I think many people, why do you run for the board? Some people might run because they're angry at somebody and they want to get on and they want to change things up. I don't like the way Del Mar's running. Or some people might get on the board because, you know what, this is going to be good connections, it's going to be good exposure, I can run for something bigger later. There's all kinds of reasons why people run. I think the majority, or at least I want to believe, the majority of people run because they want to make a difference for children, for staff. I think our internal clients are just as important as our external clients. I think the staff, I think our professors, I think everybody that works here, they're just as important as our clients, as our external clients, our students that are coming in. And so what I bring to the board, I believe, is just a really pure agenda of doing what I can in my own way, and then as a total board, to help Del Mar continue to succeed and do a really great job in being the #1 college in the nation.
Nice.
So that's
You're just
that's
here
who
for
I
the
am.
good of the college, man.
Yeah, really,
You
and
know?
truly, yeah,
You're
absolutely.
just here to make Del Mar great.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I think most of you are, and without question, but it's good to articulate that. You know, the aspirational thing is interesting too, for students and people in the community. So, if you want to get married, that's a good aspiration, nothing wrong with that, but then there got to be more somehow with it. And when I was president in Ohio, I would go to a restaurant and get a hamburger or whatever, and here comes the wait help. And I would say, so where are you going to school? And they'd say, well, I've been meaning to go. I need to go to school. You know, they're 30. And I'd say, so are you going to wait tables for a while? I mean, it's all right too. But yeah, well, what do you like? And I like accounting. And they'd say, and then I'd give them my card, and I'd say, you need to go to school. And but it is just to help people with that aspirational thinking about what they can do and what they can be. And I mean, you can do that too. You're on the board. And you know, it was easy to do it at restaurants, and because you'd see people waiting tables. I mean, it's a generalization, but you got to sense what their life was and what they were making, and hopefully they could do better. And the notion that you need to go to school, you need to get that nursing degree, and you can do it, is something they would have too. So, all right, thanks. That was good. All right, I'm getting reprimanded for giving homework, but you didn't have to do it. You got off the hook as well, but everybody got a little homework, and this is just to help get our thoughts going a bit. And what you got were those 3 articles. So in this retreat, you know, what we are really trying to focus on for you is thinking as a board. You know, thinking at board level and being a member of the board. So does anybody have any thoughts about what they saw? You read in this article? All right. Here's what I'm going to help you with then. So the first one was community colleges, improving lives and community economic vitality. The reason I gave that to you is it's a nice synopsis of what we do, is really what it was about. So as a board member, I read through that too last night. The very second line, it says, improving lives and the economic vitality of our community through education, generation after generation. For you as a board, that's a nice line. And you've said it, but that's a really nice line to keep in mind. At the top of the second page in that paragraph, they said one thing that the college was doing during pandemic is they addressed those technology gaps, and they tried to find tuition relief for students because they knew students were struggling. And those were 2 things that this particular school in wherever it was, I don't remember, Chicago. That was 2 things, help with the technology and the relief. In the paragraph right below that, they said they started a scholarship for short-term training programs. So the notion was that in that school, they thought, you know, as well as getting that 2-year degree and certificate, even 1-year certificate, but the short-term training programs could benefit people as well in that regard. And especially for those who had job loss, it talks about that. It goes on and says, we don't want to forget that we're embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's a big piece of what we're doing. The next part is what community colleges do best. And they just they gave some numbers of what percentage of the undergraduates we serve, different populations that are there. But the second paragraph says, our mission is not only to address current problems, to be adaptable, resilient, and ready for tomorrow's challenges and opportunities. So that line for you as a board is you have enormous challenges right now. And then that concept of being adaptable is just essential. It's just completely essential. You can't do things like they were done before because things are just different than they were before. And they say that's what community colleges do best. There's a shortage of skilled workers in the healthcare fields that talks about that. And then the last page, the second to the last paragraph, it says, there are no better institutions to support this revitalization than community colleges. And some of us said that last night as well. So we plan for innovation in teaching and learning, and that's a huge thing, that faculty just have to be the best they can be in the classroom. That we use equity and inclusion, and support the great economic recovery locally and nationally, collaborate with K-12 institutions, partner with business and universities, and leverage relationships. So that article, that was the purpose. So it's just to think, you know, this is what we do in a lot of ways.
I was really
Yeah.
struck by, even though it's Chicago, how similar that story is to what we do. I mean, I was kind of, in my mind, checking things off
Right.
in the course of that. I think there are obviously things we can always continue to improve on, and there's
Yeah.
always new students to reach. But I thought there were a lot of similarities in just how they approach
Right.
the variety of needs from the community at the community college, how they approach solving those problems.
I have to agree with that. So I was reading these articles and I was thinking, we already do all this. This sounds like conversations at board meetings.
Yeah.
And I haven't been on the board that long, but I recognized everything they were talking about.
There you go.
I agree with,
Use your microphone, please.
figure out how to work it. All right, there you go.
All right.
I agree with that. I think that there's been a huge, in this community, particularly with Del Mar College, there's been a huge paradigm shift. And so much of the economy that's growing, the challenge, or the opportunities that are coming along, or from industry that's looking this area, coming in here, looking at this area, coming in here and expecting or already expect or have the expectation that Del Mar is going to be the partner
Yeah.
that they choose to be able to train their coming workforce. And conversations I had over the last week, they were talking about that the process technology program that we have is not going to be big enough because there's a lot of retirements coming in the Valeros and the Citgos and in our local big refinery plants. Before, years ago, I'm talking 8, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, probably prior to Mark coming on, the thought was that, well, people going to Del Mar and then going to Texas A&M Corpus Christi were going to get their education, get their skills here, and then go elsewhere to go get experience. And that used to be the case for going back 50 years. That's not the case now.
Right.
The people here are looking for their positions to be filled by local talent versus having to bring
Yeah.
people in from elsewhere
Right.
in order to cover the holes that retirement's going to cause. So I mean, I think that we're way on the right track.
Yeah. Carol, you're right. The community college is a similar animal. I mean, our mission is pretty clear about what we're supposed to be doing. And those various things that particular Chicago college is doing, you're doing in many ways too, but as a board, just know these are the things that need to happen. The second article was no quick turnaround in sight. So this is after, COVID. So as we know, when COVID hit, Mark and his staff and community college across the country did this Herculean task of shutting down and in short order sending everything, where they may have had 15, 20% of their courses online, going to 100% online, which is just a stunning task. I mean, I know people like Mark just did it, but when you reflect on it, you think, that is amazing that happened. But then, we felt that in the summer, that first summer of 2020, there was this talk that students aren't going to want to go back to the 4-year because they're not going to want to live in the dorm, so they're going to come to us. But it didn't happen. So, then we went through a downturn in enrollment for that continued into the spring of 21, and then this article saying it's still happening in a lot of ways. And this article then says, in the second line, especially students of color and males have declined. And the working class has, because the jobs was what, and that's our students in a lot of regard, but students of color and males also were declining in that regard too. But then there's an optimism when a vaccine came, that we think that'll help us in that regard. And students, this is talked about, students facing the challenges that they have. Colleges and schools need to work together. We need to transition to in-person learning. And I assume, well, I saw students out there, that you're moving that direction pretty quickly in the curriculum. And again, that just says the enrollment hurt students of color and a lot of males is what we saw declining in that regard. Did anybody think anything on that? Yeah.
We'll talk about it at some point over the
Yeah.
next 2 days, but the concern that I have had is around new students in the pipeline for community colleges for Del Mar, and then the students who have not come back yet to
Right.
finish their degree. And I'm concerned about the high school class of 20 and 21 and their lack of engagement with mentors and coaches and counselors and others who would encourage their college application process. And that shut down for those 2 high school classes, maybe not quite as much 21, but definitely in the spring of 20, that just shut down for those students. And so I think there's some recruitment and marketing and access issues for us to really wrap our hands around, and what resources are necessary for us to reach out in our service area and get those students into a higher education pipeline. And that might be a regional consortium of some kind, that might, but I think there's going to have to be some specialized work around enrollment, because those students are there, they're just not here or in higher education. So I'm really concerned about those numbers and how we get those students in the pipeline or back.
We did say cooperation with K-12, and we know the people are there, but with finding ways to get them back in here. And your point too, that these articles are about other colleges, but so everybody's dealing with it and trying to figure out how to bring them into that as well. And then the last article.
I want to
Yeah.
follow up what Carol said. The K through 12, not only are they not around coaches and that sort of thing, although they're mostly back in class, but there's been a disconnect. You talk to K through 12 educators, and I think Lori might be able to speak on this. This has been the most challenging year. The kids did not come back the same. The parents did not come back the same. And so I guess recognizing the challenges that school districts are going through would be a big part of this as well.
So they're having, the challenge is just to get their own house back to normal.
If it ever will.
If it ever will, much less trying to encourage those children to continue after high school. I'm not saying that they don't want to do that, but I think just the bandwidth of all that we ask high schools to do with students today, and to make sure that those students move on to higher education,
Yeah, and part of it, I
is
guess,
laudable, but hard to do in this environment.
if more kids are not having good experience in high school, that's going to be an impediment for them to want to continue their education.
Not only that, but a lot of skills were lost. We're seeing, I'm at the middle school, but even the high schools, they're just, their immaturity, their levels of engagement, and their social interaction He has been isolated, because I know students haven't been out of house for a year. And I know I have several students that haven't even crossed the bridge to come to Corpus. There's just a lot of backtracking that we're doing. I mean, we're seeing these kids come in and they're almost feral. They don't know how to interact with adults, let alone their peers. They don't know how to sit in a chair. I mean, these are 12 and 13-year-olds that's been in school for several years. And they're just, and their skill level, their reading levels, they've been checking a box for 18 months. I mean, just going back to writing, it's like, you know, this is a capital, what? And just learning the steps of math. I mean, they're just really, they have degressed socially, mentally, and academically. And it's going to take a couple of years to get a lot of these students back in check. And I know a lot of campuses are still closed. I know my campus is still closed. And parents have to meet with teachers outside still. So we still don't have, and every district and every campus is different based on the leadership that they're allowing people in. So, and we still have COVID restrictions and so forth. So it's just been it's been very challenging. It's been 95% behavior, 5% teaching. So you're still going to have lack of instructions and mastery of items this school year. So we're going to see a lot of remedial kids coming into our campuses or into Del Mar.
And we've started talking about in some of our board meetings the likely need for increased mental health services for our students as they come back and try to adapt to coming back. And in listening to y'all talk, I mean, I think we all are trying to figure out how to adjust, right, to life after COVID and recognizing that it probably will never be like it was. And so that's got to be doubly difficult for people trying to come back to school.
Well, that third article, the very last paragraph, I won't go through it all, but very last paragraph, the last line says, crises like the one we experienced in 2020 have the potential to bring out the best in us, because we learned something about assessment of students, about the way they learn and learning styles, and how we can do more online. Learn something from that, but, he says, only if we open our eyes and minds to see and explore new possibilities rather than hope for a return to 2019. So, you know, I share that with you because your conversations now are exactly that. At a board level, it's pretty much where should we be going? Where should this college be going? Knowing that in 2019 we operated one way and we were cruising right along. We hit COVID and students got slammed and everybody got hit hard and things have changed. And we're struggling with an enrollment, but we're optimistic that there's ways to deal with it. Yeah, were you going to say something, Susan?
No, I think I was following up on we've always struggled with the preparedness of our students, or the students as they come to us, or the lack of preparedness academically and having to teach them just to get them college ready. And I think that's going to be significantly more challenging. So all of these issues, again, they're the same. We're always doing this, addressing some of these same issues, but I just feel like there's a magnifying glass. Everything has been exacerbated and it's more urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, we really wanted our kids to come face to face, but we really want our kids to come back face to face in the classroom, but that's going to be the older generation. Like the students that are coming up now, they're going to want more online learning because we've had to go back. They're starting to, after 18 months of online learning, they're actually comfortable with that. So you're going to see the old generation want that face to face, but the high schoolers and the middle schoolers that are coming through, they're going to want online learning because that is what we've been even taught. Even when my students came back this year, we went face to face, notes, paper, and they're like, we can't do this. They were totally stressed out, and we had to bring in more counseling for these students. So I went back to computers, and they're like, oh, this is great. They want the computers now because this is what they've been learning to do for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to see, there's going to be some challenges.
So you're thinking as a board, and well, your daily experience as well translates into you as a board member. These are the things we got to do, and then Mark has to come up with the strategies and implement the strategies that go with it.
Well, and that's true, and industry is shifting. I mean, we just got to accept it. When, like in my industry, when we went online, I saw a lot of older lawyers just say, I'm not going to do it, and they got out. The younger attorneys who are very comfortable with it. I doubt that we're ever going to go back to every hearing, every trial is going to be in the courtroom. And certainly the correspondence and communication between the attorneys is more and more online. And I don't think that that's a unique to the legal profession. And as you say, generation coming up, they're comfortable with it, they're more comfortable with it. I mean, these changes are coming and can't be stopped. And it's been accelerated by the pandemic.
Great. That was good conversation. Yeah, go
Just
ahead.
really quickly, I think the
Yes.
comments have been so strong. I agree with everything, especially what Lori's saying about kids coming back and not knowing how to almost behave or to just being out that long of a time. But what I'm seeing with educators very often now is that even the way we say it, we go, we just want everything to get back to normal. That normal's gone. We have to create a new normal. That normal, we're not going to ever go back to the way it was. Lori's correct. Kids are saying, well, even my grandson at 7 said yesterday, well, I can just go onto Canvas and I can just go do my assignments on Canvas. I don't have to go to school. It's 7. So he's already used to that. And looking at him, he hasn't had one regular school year since he started school.
Yeah.
He doesn't, so that old normal's gone. Take it all the way up to getting college ready,
Yeah.
college readiness. So it's the K-12 schools need to address it, but the colleges need to address it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's gonna
partnership.
have to, absolutely, it's gonna have to be,
Right.
Together. So
Right.
that normal is
Yeah,
gone.
maybe have a committee or something.
Right.
Pulling in our Del Mar with those counselors and principals and just, what do you see, what are the trends so we can match their trends and we can have that extension
Right.
flowing through. We're gonna have to really have like open communication with their schools.
So
in our
you and a
area.
board, you as a board, you know that. I mean, it's become evident that this K-12 partnership is something that has to happen. Mark's staff, I'm sure, is fully into it. But that's where the partnership between the CEO and the board comes in. So you're expressing what you're feeling are the needs as a board and a member of the community for us to be successful in educating people and children and youth and adults. But the partnership then is that Mark's saying, I got this staff, and here's what we're trying to do, and here's how we're trying to address the need that you have. So that's where the partnership comes in. But then your feedback to him is, my 7-year-old grandchild is really literate when it comes to using a computer. And give him 10 more years, and who knows where they'll be. So, the challenge then is for a college is to try and think, where are we going to be in that time frame in terms of technology and teaching children and modes of instruction that come with that. So good thoughts. Good board thoughts is what it is there. So we're going to shift a little bit to effectiveness, you as a board. So if you look at Worksheet 1, now we go to our worksheets. And this is just this comes out of, there's a nice book, I don't know that you've had it, but ACCT had just come up with trusteeship in community college. And it's just a 101 primer on community college, being a community college trustee. So a fair amount of the material comes from this as well. But one is they listed their characteristics of an effective board of regents. These are general characteristics: your involvement, your responsibility, trust and caring, use of resources, listening, and self-examination are just general characteristics. So what I want you to do in just a couple of minutes, two of you talk, are we allowed to do this? Okay. I mean, I don't know if it'll be recorded exactly, but Ed and Bill and Libby and Rudy and Carol and Nick and Laurie and Susan, and you get mark, all right? Look at those characteristics and just think about yourself as the Del Mar Board of Regents. And I wrote there, you're 1 to 5. You know, just say, where are we in these general characteristics of a board? This shouldn't take you too long, but, you know, just share, are we involved, are we responsible? But you can be honest. Nobody's going to collect it and take it, but just think, how are we doing as a board in these various characteristics? So just take a couple minutes and chat with each other and see.
Brad, are we evaluating the board itself or
Yes, this
us
is
individually?
You're going to do that next.
Oh, okay.
First, this is a how are you as a board doing? Laura, you want to share some thoughts? Yeah, you do. You see, you're the teacher. You always called on everybody. Now we get back at you. So, and how long have you been on this board? You're fairly new.
So I've been on, I guess, a year now, 11 months.
Yeah,
I was
okay.
elected
So-
last year, 2020.
Right. All right.
And I think for involvement, I think that's the one I was probably moved the most, is being new, especially since 4 of us is new. There's already an existing culture between board members, and we're having to assimilate and adapt. That as we adapt to the existing board, we're actually moving towards a new board. I think this, being here today is helping with that.
Exactly.
And the team building. So I
Right.
think for me, that's a little bit frustrating, not frustrating, but a little nerve-wracking, because I feel like I need to earn the existing board's trust. So I'm always kind of very hesitant, making sure that I'm on board with people, not willing. I'm at the point where I don't really always want to speak up. I'm waiting to see if someone will say it first. Because I just don't want to draw attention to myself over and over again.
Right. So you see general board involvement,
Yeah.
and you're trying to figure out how you fit.
And I think,
into
and there's
that.
4 of us doing that. So I think that's kind of like our challenge, but like our involvement, I believe all of us has a sense of ownership. I really
Yeah.
believe that we, each as an individual, we are strong. This is blending our strengths into each other.
Yeah.
And my sort of counterpoint was that because there are so many new people,
Yeah.
it's not like, there's such a solid old culture, I'll call it that.
Yeah.
Where one person, you're not the one kid new on the block.
Right.
You know, you almost outnumber us old guys.
Right. Bill, what'd you think about? What's that?
It said almost outnumbered. It's like,
What about board involvement?
one of the things that was important to me in this category was the onboarding process and the effort the college made to educate me about what all senior staff was doing, who they were, their responsibilities, which was very different from when I got on the city council and very different when I got on the school board. And I thought that was important to creating a sense of ownership. Now, Ed had a different experience, or perspective.
Yeah.
And I've been around 5 years.
Yeah, right.
And honestly, it's probably self-criticism, but I don't get to campus much. In 5 years, I've not been to campus very often. We used to have an annual lunch with the president individually. That stopped about 2 years ago, obviously for COVID.
Right.
But the involvement with the board is great on a board level, but the involvement with me and administration or me on campus with professors, it has been extremely limited. And I think that I would benefit more with more involvement. My knowledge and expertise about the college would improve. And I've been here 5 years, and I think it's been really limited. I don't know that it's all my fault, but certainly part of it is.
Right.
So we compromised.
Yes. Right. That's good. You're accountants. Stick with a number. Got to go with a number. That's right. So there's a general board involvement, but you just have to think about it. Nick, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. How involved are we, with the college itself as board members? I make it a point to be on campus. I do. I make it a point to, just take a stroll one time and one day and just go through the campus and look at the work that we have accomplished. I'm proud of it. I know the workers. I stop and we talk, we chat, and being a student, it makes it even easier.
Yeah.
So, it's important to have that involvement. That sense of ownership is there. As a
Right.
board,
Yeah.
we all have that,
Right.
and you can see it.
Yeah.
But you're a board member. You need to know your campus.
Right. Later in the retreat, we're going to goals. So as we have these conversations, make notes, because these can be goals for the board at some point later, too. Let's skip down here to trust and caring. Members trust and care about one another to openly express their concerns, feelings, and ideas. Were you going to, Laura, you raising your hand? Oh, no.
I was thinking about at the board table, I guess all of my perspective was at the board table, and our behaviors at the board table was really where I focused my thoughts. And I am sometimes concerned that we don't provide enough verbal feedback. And that could be a sign of concurrence. And which I hope that's what it is. The positive part means, okay, we're good with what was reported and I don't have any questions. But sometimes even verbal feedback around concurrence or encouragement or acknowledgement that what staff is presenting would be helpful.
Right.
I'm hoping it's not because we don't trust each other or are unwilling to express concerns at the board table.
Right.
So I would like to see more feedback, again, even if it's positive reinforcement for what staff is presenting to us or questions from the board. So I didn't really have, I rated it a 3 or 4 because I really wasn't sure what's going on with that.
Right.
So Rudy and I actually rated this a 2 prior to last night. And
Well, that's good. I'm glad last night did that.
And hopefully a 3 after last night, because we didn't restrict it just to the board table, but more of just team building even beyond the board table. And did, along with this and the active listening, talked about how sometimes, along with what you said, Carol, it doesn't always feel like there's robust conversation about things, or like you said, even in concurrence, there's not much said, right? Now, none of us, I don't think, wants to extend the length of our meetings, and perhaps that's sometimes the reason why, we don't always need to hear ourselves talk. But at the same time, it doesn't always feel like that there's much conversation about things. And to Lori's point, which I thought was a really good point, I've been on the board now 2.5 years, so I'm right in the middle of everybody. And what really helped me, and certainly get to know Lori, was when we served on the ethics committee together. That was a great experience for the 3 of us to be able to work together, get to know each other better, understand how we work. And I didn't know Lori prior to her serving, and I really enjoyed that process and getting to know her.
Excellent.
We gave a very high score on this, and I've been on bad boards and on boards where the people have personal agendas or there's personal animosity between board members, and I feel none of that on this board. So when you start talking about trust and caring about one another, and I do agree that like the dinner last night, going to the seminar, and socializing, it really helps that quite a bit. I guess also sitting next to Linda is probably the nicest person ever. It's like it makes a difference too. I've been on boards where people didn't care about each other, and I don't feel any of that on this board.
Right. So you have a nice little range there. Yeah, go ahead,
And
Laurie.
we did mention when we were talking about, I believe that we all have mutual respect for each other. I don't think we've never talked them down to people. No one's ever said anything negative about each other. So I really think that's on a positive note that we do have that and moving forward.
Right. Yeah, Linda.
We talked about it as well and rated it pretty high as well. I feel so good when I'm with this group, which is a great thing. And I feel like I trust everyone, but I feel I'm also a very trusting person. But I think sometimes, just maybe, and I might be stretching a little bit here, just maybe sometimes we're almost too nice, and that we need to be maybe a little bit more forthcoming with anything, if there's something that maybe we disagree with, that sometimes it's through a little bit of discomfort that you can move even further along. I'm not saying to do it on, on purpose or anything like that, but what I'm saying is, I think we're just really, I know this sounds weird, nice people.
Yeah.
And we want to be nice to each other, but we don't want a nice college. We want a great college. And that might mean really pushing the envelope a little bit more and seeing where we can go. I
Right.
don't know if that makes sense, just a
No,
thought.
that's a very good point. And, a lot of it falls to the leadership of the board in a lot of ways. And so it's to encourage that in a nice way. So if someone makes a proposal or a suggestion of something being done, rather than just sitting back and just not saying anything, there's some, as you all know, there's some ways, you know what? That's good, but have we thought about the others? And I think Carol's suggesting she would like to hear that in some ways, that it's not confrontational or not nasty, but it's, let's hear what else we're thinking about as well. So that's a really good thing. That really is, to be able to do it. And then you as a board, you want different perspectives and different ideas, and you bring different perspectives and ideas, but to make sure that they're out there is critical in a lot of ways. So, all right. Hope you got some, I guess somebody's keeping notes for us here, because what I do is at the end of this retreat is I send a summary to you. And I try my best, since I'm not taking notes, but to remember, but I get something from somebody helps me to know that. And then you can take that as the executive committee of the board and say, here are some things that we spoke about, and is there something we should, would be a next step for us to do as well. So keep those in mind. You're an effective board, but everybody there's always room for improvement, and I think you express some of those things. So Worksheet 2, all right? Worksheet 2. This is a little bit more, this is what we talked about individually. That was collective, but this is about as an individual. And this time we're going to do the same. The teaching thing is think, pair, share. You think it through, you pair up with somebody, and then you share. So it's a common educational technique. But we're going to do this one more time, just with the same person as well. But this is you as a person. And just those things, you work as a member of the board, make trusteeship a priority, know the community and represent your visionary, support the college pursuit in its mission, act with integrity, use influence wisely, avoid conflicts of interest. And this time, I think, just tell the person next to you, only thing is just 2 of these are my strength, and 2 of these I could do a little better, I would say. And just, just being honest and say, as an individual board member, I'm good at this, but I wish I was a little better at something else. So we'll take another 5 minutes or so and just share with the person next to you on that. None of us are perfect, are we? Well, maybe we are.
I just got discounted on this because it's board member perspective, and
I think if you had to, because it's a member, but if anything, I think
did you get a set? You got some to follow, Augie, you got some to follow along?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
All right. right, 1 minute. One more minute. Keep that. All right, here we go. We got this. So here's what we'll do this time. Instead of you talking about yourself, Bill, what did Ed say about what are his strengths as an individual on the board, and what does he feel he could do a little better?
Well, he is excellent at avoiding conflicts of interest.
Good.
And he's excellent at making being a trustee a priority.
All right. So you're at all meetings, you read all the material.
I do.
Oh, he does more than that.
Oh, okay.
He definitely, he dives into the numbers,
Yeah.
and he analyzes them. So my observation is consistent with his personal assessment.
That's right.
And if
Two-
I'm remembering correctly, he feels like he could do better working as a member of the board unit. And Ed, you're going to have to help me. I forgot what your second.
Maybe he only
But-
has one. But
Let me expound
Yeah.
on that just a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that maybe we worked, and me included, we worked too well together as a unit and don't challenge administration's assumptions enough. I try to challenge the ones that I'm comfortable with, which would be around finance and accounting. But I've seen on this board as well as many other boards where administration brings forth assumptions that appear to be facts. Well, they're assumptions. They need to be challenged so they can be proven as facts. And I don't think that I do enough of that. I don't think any board does enough of that. None that I've seen.
All right. Board members, in my experience, are a range of personalities and a range of styles. And so there are those that are nicer and think things through, but there are those that analyze things in a different way and see things differently in that regard. So, my recommendation is, here we talked a little earlier that, ask some questions and share some thoughts and that sort of thing. Well, here's some asking some questions and sharing thoughts. Meanwhile, Mark and his staff have worked really hard to bring forth proposals that make sense, have some credibility to them, and are valuable moving the institution forward. So, having been a president, you bring that in, and then a board member challenges. It takes skill for that not to be seen as an affront, but more as, I'm just asking. I'm just want to know, is that the regard? Is that the way it is? Then the president can say, yes, this is what we found at this point. And then the conversation can go, I'd like you just to check once more. Well, that's a little frustrating to a president, so just know that is. But nonetheless, it can be that to make me feel better, this is where I want. But it has to be genuine. It has to be a genuine concern in it as well. So, but that's your responsibility in that regard. Later we'll have a little piece on that. Cool? All right. Somebody else. Nick, tell us about Libby.
Real quick. Libby, her strengths, she acts with integrity and respect. And I think that's above reproach. I mean,
Yeah.
gosh, on the street, scored her 5 there. She thinks that's her strong points, and I believe that too. And she also, she definitely avoids conflict of interest. Okay, she just thinks that if you serve on a board, you have a conflict of interest, you should not get
Yeah.
engaged in a conversation or in a vote.
Right.
And so I think that's really important in public
Okay.
service, everywhere.
What does she want to do better?
I don't like to talk about her weaknesses, but.
Not a weakness, but just
Anyway,
something.
she says she could be more visionary and more thoughtful in
Okay.
terms of,
Right.
of the college. And then the other one was making, being a trustee a priority. Again, you know, we serve because we want to make our community in Delmore College
Right.
better, but we do have other responsibilities in our private life. When we come to the board, particularly Libby, she brings it. She makes every contribution, the biggest contribution she can make on the board.
Yeah.
But when she's outside of
Yeah.
the inner workings at Del Mar, then she's got her thoughts
Yeah.
focused on,
right,
on things that are also important to her.
All right. Tell us about Nick.
Well, Nick and I didn't do the assignment exactly as
right,
as
that's okay.
presented because Nick wouldn't talk about himself. And so I
Oh.
had to tell Nick what I thought his strengths were. So Nick's number one strength is humility. But
All right.
but actually, knowing the community and
All right.
and literally the words that I used are his tentacles into the community are very widespread, and so when he
All right.
provides input onto something, I know it's coming from a really deep understanding. And then the other piece was his support of the college's mission, that because of his background and who he is, I know that the decisions that he makes with the interest of the college,
All right. Excellent.
first and foremost, so.
Nick, is there anything, I know you don't like to talk about yourself, but is there anything you think you would like to do a little better?
Yeah, like I think everybody should challenge a little more, you know, when it comes to questions that they have and maybe are apprehensive about asking about certain questions about certain aspects when it comes to reports. And with me, it's like, okay, you know, I hear something I have a question about, I'll wait and see if my question is answered, and usually it is, but if it's not answered, then I'm going straight to Mark.
Yeah.
He's going to have to answer it.
Well, that's not a bad thing, you know? Right, exactly. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and so, yeah, challenges are important.
Yeah. And
It's what-
questions.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
challenges, but it's questions. I mean, as a board member, you feel this fiduciary responsibility to make sure the institution, you know, your Board of Regents, you're entrusted to run this public institution effectively.
The
Meets its
cohesiveness
mission.
of the board, that depends on, you know, if we're in agreement, and we are basically by listening and asking and not challenging each other, but challenging, you know, the problems that are presented to us, you know.
Yeah. Now, you have board committees, right? Do you have board committees?
We have a couple,
Yeah.
we have a standing audit committee, and right now we have an ad hoc bylaws and ethics committee.
Okay, all right.
The board decides that every biennium as it reorganizes itself, then we're gonna, our new practice is to start doing that every biennium.
Okay, all right, good. I won't ask Mark. You want Mark to do this? All right, cool.
No, I'll be glad to.
Yeah.
Dr. Linda,
right.
Let me just jump in. So, I mean, you can go down, everybody knows Dr. Linda, and from my perspective, it's kind of unfair. Her world, her professional world
Right.
was about boards and
Yeah.
dealing with them and stuff. So, but you know, her visionary ability to be visionary and integrity, I mean, those kinds of things are, I think impeccable. One of kind of as we colored outside the lines, you know, we talked about know the community and represent it in its best interest. And she asked me what I thought about it. And I said the definition of the community is very different from everybody in here. Because the community, the world that you come from is not the world that you come from, or that I come from. And I'm proud to say that I come from the world that our students come from, literally in the old neighborhoods here. But
Yeah.
when that's defined very differently, Mr. Bennett, from different part of the country, literally, and the like, I mean, it's very different. Okay, that worldview is very different. And so, that was the discussion that we had, because, as was disclosed last night, as we all talked and everything else about our experiences, to me, it stood out that is a very distinguishing piece. Now, it's a publicly elected lay board. Okay, that's the way it's supposed to work, and I get that. And it's my job to challenge back, and I'm going to, and I am more and more. So I'm looking for the opportunity. I hope the word, the takeaway for today is that we challenge each other, because I'm going to challenge you back, because, this world that I represent every day and that I'm steeped in and from is important to me. And it is my job to make sure that it is understood more readily. And I don't think it is by everybody in this room, by far in some cases. Challenging.
All right.
Really quickly, let me just mention something. It's sort of reminded me of a time, and I'll be real quick about this, when I was sort of sitting in Mark's chair when I was at the service center, and we'd have our board meetings, and I remember that a board member, they were great. Our board was just wonderful, a very strong board. And one of the board members came to me afterwards and said, may I speak to you privately? And I said, sure, and came into my office and said, Linda, I love what's happening. I'm real pleased with everything. I'm pleased with your leadership and honor. She goes, but at all of our board meetings, it's all sunshine and rainbows. It's all great things, all good things that are going on. And I really struggled with what she was trying to tell me. She wanted to hear challenges or bad news or things that we were, in other words, it can't all be this good, is what she was trying to tell me. And I really had to sort of internalize that, because she, very much like your staff and like the work that you do, I had a great staff that did their homework. They came prepared and they presented, but this board member was asking for, they want a challenge. They wanted, and I wasn't giving them a challenge. So it's really difficult to sort of, that mindset. And now that I'm a board member, and I'm talking also about challenging, and that's how we're going to grow, and that's how we're going to move forward, it just reminded me of that time. I don't think I ever was able to have a board meeting that sort of pleased her, the fact that there wasn't anything really bad I was presenting. But I tried to tell them, these are a couple of challenges that we're having and we're struggling with and we're working with. I sort of had like an informational item. These are some things that we're working on that we want to do better, or so forth. I just wanted to share that. Because I think it's important, because your staff is doing a really strong job in doing their homework. They do their homework before they come to us. And I think that's to be commended. And sometimes maybe we don't challenge because we see the work that's been put into that. That's just a thought. I just wanted to share that.
If I might rebut, we've had better board meetings than others. And I think this last one was, I've received feedback that how smoothly this last one went. It was just what was needed, and it was very, very efficient and that kind of thing. I received feedback. And then we've had a couple that were just like, oh gosh, I just want to get out of here. because of the circumstances and the difficulties and the length and everything else. And so some are better than others. I mean, we recognize that. And the team does do that. I think there's some individual work that's probably gone by the wayside over the past, especially the 18 months in the past of engagement and kind of meeting individually. I remember telling Carol just this past summer, I said, I'm getting ready. I'm gonna ramp up, and we're gonna do those lunches, Mr. Bennett, that we used to do, and do all those kinds of things so we can sit down and then boom, the world changed in a very drastic manner with the spike. So anyway, I just had to add that.
Nice. So go ahead. What were you going to say, Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, with regard to what
Yes.
Laurie shared with me, was particularly, and I learned more, is that she works well with the board as a unit and really appreciated working on our committee. And she's focused on.
Which committee is that?
The bylaws and ethics.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
with Libby, that Libby chaired for us.
Mhm.
And I think we shared that experience, and I think a lot of it was, we had a product. We
Yeah.
could say, we had a goal, we had a product, we
Mhm.
accomplished it. And-
Right.
And that's sort of the way her focus
Nice.
is, and she brings that to the
Mhm.
table.
Good.
And one of the things that we discussed was making being a trustee a priority, because life does get in the way, our work gets in the way, our children and so forth. So this is kind of a second job, so we just
Mhm.
need to keep mindful of that, but it's an important job. And the integrity and respect here and as well in the community, because people do know us and
Mhm.
and so forth. Conflict of interest was not an issue at all, and using our influence, and we want to make sure that the influence is effective, not a negative influence and so forth. But again, being visionary and pursuing and understanding the mission and believing in the mission, the buy-in was very important to her.
Yeah. You want to say anything, Carol?
Well, what I actually think was my strength was not on the list.
Oh, good.
I'm a process person.
Yeah.
And so I'm about process. And I don't ever presume that I have the best answer, but if I can facilitate a process by which we can reach that answer together. So that actually is I think my
Yeah.
strength as a
Well,
board
everybody
member.
thinks a little differently. So there are big picture visionary people that are kind of thinking big things and out there, and then there are people that like to know the specifics and what's happening and where's it going. And that dynamic working together where the visionary has to work with the specific person is something that has to be worked out. But a board needs both. It needs because there are people that have the big ideas, and then they share them with Mark, and Mark says, well, we're working on that, or that's a good idea, I need to think that one through, and that sort of thing. But then there is the group that likes to know specifics. What's the devil is in the detail kind of line that comes out that says, that's great, but, tell me about this. And that's where some of that, what I'm hearing, some of that thought about if it's challenging or questioning is in some of that detail. Mark's got that unenviable job that I once had too, that you got to and Linda did too, that you're trying to move institution forward in a big way against these days, against huge challenges based on obviously COVID and impact of enrollment and students and their lives and all that goes with it. But at the same time, there is a budget and there is personnel and there are specific things that go with it. So it's very challenging in that regard, but it's the nature of the beast of what we're talking about too. One more before then we'll get toward the break, but I'm going to skip to Worksheet 4, which just leads us into a lot of what we've been discussing. And again, what I would tell you to do is this conversation is nice and flowing, a lot of good ideas. We said about trust and caring, last night, there was a lot of trust and caring last night about what's going on in people's lives and how they got to where they are. But today, too, is pretty much, we're sharing, that's what retreats are for, an environment where you can share a little more about yourself and where you are. You don't have all the answers right at this second on the floor, but in a retreat, then what we do is try and summarize it and say, this is something we can work on in the future. So what we're doing is identifying a lot of those pieces. So this one, and I think I wanted to take a break at 10:30, so we're at 10:03. All right, so we got a few, if everybody can hang in there, then we'll do that. All right. The most important relationship in the college is between the president and the board and the president. It is the most critical one. And if it's effective and it's going well, that transcends the institution. And the college knows it, the community knows it, and they know the board and the president are in sync. They're working together. They don't have to know all the details, but, you know, when an occasional article comes out in the paper, or, you know, you're talking with people and the organizations you're involved with, and, you know, Mark gets accolades for things, and being doing that article the other day, and didn't you just do a newspaper article? I thought, I'm not newspaper, a magazine interview. Oh, all right. When I called you, you don't remember, all right. Anyhow, but, you know, doing those things all, you know, adds to it as well. So, worksheet 4, and what I'm going to say, I'll just read through it, and then just tell me what, you remember now? I thought maybe I was wrong, but yeah, okay.
That was an unplanned, yeah, I reacted to something.
That was a good thing, though. It was a good thing. So, you know, this is the board-president relationships. These are the general concepts. So what I'm going to ask, I'll go through them, and then you tell me how you define them, how you define those things. So knowledge and respect of different roles. And, you know, largely that's an inexact science, and Linda knows, too, having worked with the board, but, you know, the general concept is the board is governance, sets policy, sets direction. That's why we're going to do a lot of that futures thing, and monitoring. A lot of those pieces, and those are nice, you know, those are 4 nice primary functions for a board. The president is the administrator, and his staff and all the people that are behind that, and the execution of the policy and the direction and the implementation. It's nice when it's real clean, but it's not always real clean. It's an inexact science in many, many ways. And you know, in the Venn diagram, you have these 2 set here, but you know, it kind of crisscrosses in some ways. But that's generally what it is. So just, I'm going to come back to it, but just a comment on it will be good. Developing a sense of shared purpose is critical between the board and the president. And it comes in strategic planning, and I know you're doing that, the direction, setting priorities, have a shared vision, and a periodic review of the mission, vision, and values. So I heard today that you remind yourself of your mission before each meeting. It's a commendable thing, because too many times in too many institutions, that mission is there, and there it goes. Whatever. But, you know, I read through yours a couple times too, and it has some real nice real nice phrases that really says, this is who you are. And, you know, when you go through the accreditation process, the accreditation body, that's the foundation. The mission is what the accreditation body says, what's your mission statement? And then if it's in your mission statement, then they say, you need to be doing this, is what your function is. So, a shared vision, a mission, vision, and values. Mutual respect and support. So there's clarity, respect, trust and support, communication protocols, and dealing with disagreements. So we talked a little bit about that, you know, not disagreements, but seeing things differently, and just having that mutual, with it comes the mutual respect and support. And then in that book that I just referenced, they say problems arise, not necessarily Del Mar, but you know, I've done about close to 20 of these retreats, and it's very interesting. You know, I was president of one college, and I had that board, and it changed, and its dynamics were different, and people came on with different views and personalities and all that. But then having done all these retreats with these boards, it's very interesting. Some are just cruising right along, and some are having enormous problems. And that you can't settle in a 2-day retreat, but you do what you can, and you send your recommendations, but it's a long history with that. But they say problems arise when CEOs withdraw from working with their boards. You don't have that problem. Mark's working with his board. Withholding information, avoiding bad news, or neglecting individual board members. So, you know, the job of the president is just the opposite of that. Is that they work with the board, they share information. The avoiding bad news is a very interesting thing. And from a president's perspective, things happen that aren't always favorable, and it's difficult. So the president says, I got to tell the board this, and it's not easy. So at least I would take a deep breath and say, I got to call Carol, and I got to tell her this. And but what's incumbent on the board is to be able to see that he can do that without getting his head chopped off at the same time. But you need to know that the nursing student, who was the daughter of somebody, didn't pass the exam, and all hell is breaking loose here. And so, and so he needs to be able to say that. And but I've talked to the faculty and the dean, and this is just what it is. But you need to know you're going to hear about it, and you're going to know. And I need to share that with the board. But the point is, being able to come forth with news that's not so great is critical in that point. Trustees contribute to problems when they make end runs around the CEO. So, they say something, it's challenging. I mean, you're in churches and different community organizations, and you're a trustee. I mean, you're a regent for your board of regent, and people talk. And, you just have to what you say is out there. And, and you have to be careful that you're not suggesting then somebody says, oh, I heard you're going to tell Mark. Oh, I heard you're going to do something. And really? I didn't know that. So it's, and you're representing the community and who you are. That's careful with that piece as well. You don't surprise the CEO at board meetings and criticize administration in public. We talked about being, asking questions. Asking questions is good, not a personal affront on that, or a personal affront to staff that may be presenting as well. But it's not personal. So, if you're thinking, is that number right? Is that number right? It can't be a personal affront. It's got to be, I just want to know that number doesn't look right. And then Mark can say, one, yeah, it's right. And here's how I know it's right. Or two, I'll confirm it for you at the same time that they go with that. So ongoing and open communication, and a president knows that the board needs to stay informed throughout, and the board needs to keep them informed. Clear expectations and a job description and goals, and I assume you have goals for the president, what you hope they will achieve in the upcoming year, because if he doesn't know exactly where he's supposed to be going, he's not going to go there, is what's going to happen. But if he knows his goals, and together you figured them out, and this is where you're going to work with them, then him and all the people behind him are going to say, here's our goals of what we need to be doing this year. Hopefully they're realistic, but hopefully they might be a little stretch at the same time, and it's some things we talked about. We're looking at those. Rudy, how do you describe the role between the president and the board?
I describe it how it is right now, or just in general?
Yeah, just in general.
That's critical.
Yeah.
It's absolutely critical.
And what do you see as your role and his role? How do you define it?
We're partners. We're partners.
What a good partnership.
It's a partnership.
All right,
We're
that's
partners.
good. It's a
I mean,
partnership.
we all want what's best for the institution. We all want to make sure
Yeah.
that we serve the students and the community the best way we can.
Right.
So the
for
only way
you,
to do
it's
that is.
It's a partnership.
It's a partnership.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
But it's good to think. Yeah, Linda.
It's definitely a partnership. I like that. I definitely like that. I almost thought of it, puzzle pieces that fit together, but they are two different roles.
Yeah.
And it's extremely important, even though we're partners, it's extremely important that he do his job and I do my job.
Mhm.
And I'm not supposed to do his job.
Right.
And he's not supposed to do mine.
And so when you say that,
So,
what do you
yeah.
mean?
I mean, the daily operation, the management of this entire college,
Right.
the day-to-day operation, it falls with him.
Right.
Policies, setting procedures, visionary, setting the direction falls with us.
Right.
So I worry a little bit when those lines get blurred,
Yeah,
or where, you know, I start working or dealing with faculty in a way that might not be a board member's role. I just think it needs to be very clear. And I'm really speaking not so much from Del Mar, but from my experience
Yeah.
in K-12. And I struggled with it.
yeah, oh,
I
yeah.
struggled with it as a leader, and I had boards, we weren't able to sort of get where we needed to go
Yeah.
with that. And that micromanagement played an issue into some dysfunction within the organization.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Del Mar, I'm talking about
Right.
my
I know,
experiences.
I know,
So
right.
I see it as a partnership, but I see it as two separate job responsibilities.
Right.
So I see almost a line, and I see the governance, and I see the management.
Right.
And we don't cross that line. That's my thought, that's
No, no,
my process.
that's exactly right. It ebbs and flows.
Right.
It ebbs and flows, you know, because it's nice if it was just
Sure.
right there. But, you know, you're smart people, you have ideas, and, you know, Laurie was talking about technology in the
Yeah.
education process. So, you know, as a board member, that's on her mind, and that's what is going on. So she's going to start talking about that. And, you know, where are we going with technology and education? So if it goes the right way through a board, you know, it can be, you know, a direction for the college. You know, Mark, what are you doing about the future of technology and education? Well, he's got a provost or he's got an academic affairs vice president that hopefully is on that. But at the same time, he says to that academic affairs person, where are we going? You know, what is happening in this world? Not only do I have a board member asking, but it's question I want to know too. But the board role is to bring that up, absolutely, but then monitor, not figure it out. He's got an academic VP that is great in education and education theory and know how to supervise faculty that, you know, and he's got all these deans, and he can say, we need to start thinking about that. So then the role is monitor. You know, if they get that up, then he can be saying, yeah, we're pulling that together and telling Carol, that's a priority for the board, and it's a priority for us too, but we'll figure it out. But then the minute the board members start saying, you know, I talked to your dean, and, you know,
And I think,
You know,
I'm
then
going
it's
to
hard.
challenge you for just a second, if that's okay, since we're talking about challenging. I think, and this is just Linda,
Yeah.
it's not, I think there is a clear line.
okay,
I think that there is ebb and flow, but I love your example when you said, if we have an idea or we have a certain, something that's really meaningful to us to go, Mark, this is something I really would like for you to think about. But when we start, as you said, start talking to the deans or to the faculty, then I think we've really crossed the line.
Yeah.
But that's why I see that it is, I see it as a red line.
Yeah.
But I do see this part is very ebb and flow up here.
Yeah.
But there's a line you just don't cross. And
Right.
I don't know, those are just
no,
some
that's
thoughts.
very good.
I'd
Yeah.
like to jump in, process.
Yeah, go ahead.
Process
We're all-
person here. I would
Yeah.
like to jump in. Part of what I struggle with is the tension between individual questions and the board collective decisions on direction. So if 9 of us are going to Mark with 9 different questions that are running in 9 different directions, then to me that is counterproductive, and that is not our role, is to go with individual questions.
Yes.
If we're at the board table and we're discussing technology or whatever we're discussing, and those questions come about and there's some consensus amongst the board, oh, that's a good question, I'd like to know more about that as well, then that provides direction for him that it's not just a single member's area of curiosity or personal pet project.
Right.
But to me, that discussion has to be at the board table. And it has to be a part of the context of the college's
Right.
plan And if we think we need to alter the plan, then let's have that discussion.
Yeah.
And let's have a discussion about what the metrics are going to be. But if one set of metrics is important to me and another set of metrics on the same topic are important to Nick, then where's Mark supposed to go with that?
Right.
So to me, it's all about the process and what we're discussing at the board table and the board agreement on those big issues and the metrics associated with those big issues.
Yeah.
Because we can't have 9 people running to him
No,
with their
right,
ideas.
right.
Okay, but I got a question about that. So, I mean, that kind of suggests that before Mark is asked something, there has to be a board consensus. I think each member of this board brings something to it, and if they have an individual issue, I'm not sure why that wouldn't be appropriate to bring to Mark.
I'm not saying you can't have, you shouldn't have individual conversations and shouldn't ask individual questions. The issue around something as big as technology, then do we expect does that question from an individual board member, then is that a catalyst for staff to do a big project around technology and our infrastructure and ability to support that?
No, I don't think that any individual trustee or regent has the authority to move the direction of the college. I would agree with that, but I think we were talking in the context of asking Mark questions.
Yes.
And maybe I was misunderstanding your point. I don't think there needs to be a board consensus before individuals start talking about or asking questions or even asking about a pet project that they have. Now, how are we going to deal with technology? Yeah, I get that.
So I guess, let me clarify, just based on some
Yeah.
conversations we've had. Libby has brought up the issue of mental health services.
Okay.
I brought up the issue of enrollment and the pipeline for enrollment. You know, those two things just on their own could be huge resource and huge initiatives for the college. So obviously, there's an area of interest, maybe out of today's work or as a result of staff hearing these conversations, those might come back to us in some way, shape, or form. But just because Libby is bringing it up doesn't make it a college initiative.
No.
And so if each of us had those kinds of major interests, outside of a question, I mean, it's not like, okay, tell me what we're doing around technology, you can answer that or not. But it's really about these major initiatives.
Yeah.
And if the board's not in concurrence on those or doesn't have some consensus that those indeed should be major college initiatives, then Libby can't expect a big resource allocation to that interest of hers. So when I mean pet project, I don't mean to minimize, but I'm saying if 9 of us had those kinds of big initiatives
yeah.
and we didn't come to an agreement on what indeed the college should be spending resources on over and above what our core mission is,
Right.
then that would be to me where the problem might bubble up. Okay.
You're a
Sorry.
collective-
Sorry if I didn't clarify the
That's
first.
good. No, that's great. You're a collective body, but you're individual people as well. But you are a collective body in that regard. So if something comes up, mental health issues, you know, you should think about a little process for yourselves to how that is brought up. And it can be, I mean, you know, after board meetings or on the street or at a restaurant, you run into Mark and you say, Mark, I wish we were doing something more for mental health of the students. That's not a directive. It's just a conversation, and there is nothing wrong with a conversation. But then, you know, and that can be the first step, is just a discussion.
Well, I would assume that if the scenario that we were talking
Yeah.
about where 9 or 5
Yeah.
or a number of board members all went to Mark individually with a different idea about how to address an issue, that he would put it on the agenda. And
Well,
say,
then the
you
way-
guys need to get on the same page.
Right, well, then it would go to your board chair.
Well,
Okay,
You
or-
know,
and she
then
would put it on the
go,
agenda.
to your board chair would be, am I hooked up? All right. Then it would be, you know, I just mentioned the conversation, but that's not a directive. But then it can be, Carol, you know, I'm interested in this, but Carol is a facilitator too. You know, she facilitates the function of this board. So then she says, Well, I'll bring it to the executive committee of the board, if you have an executive committee, and let's talk about that, and let's include Mark in that discussion before it becomes a goal for the next year, and follow that process, that it's discussion, then it can be a board chair, and then if it really is something that's coming up, then it's a discussion with some board members and Mark, and it follows that flow. And then does it evolve to a directive and an initiative on the college? But it is a process, exactly, in that regard.
I think also something that can help us, because when you brought up enrollment, we talked mental health, we talked technology. For example, those areas, our strategic plan has goals
Right.
and has indicators and key indicators that all match somewhere in there. So it's easy to go, hey, Mark, can we talk about goal number 3? Is
Yeah.
there anything there that we could strengthen the mental health,
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it should tie into what our work has been done through the strategic plan. Just a thought to make it a
and
little
that's part of
easier.
that process. It can be seen as a complicated process, but it's because academic institutions are shared governance institutions, and all these constituents of faculty, staff, students, board, administration, all have some input into the direction of the institution. The board is the governing body and the policy-making body that includes all of that. But then, so that process, and I'm going to do one more thing before we take the break too, could be about if there is initiatives, we have, an individual board member can't act on behalf of the board and tell Mark, you got to do whatever. And I think you all know that. So, it's pretty much them, but I feel in my heart that our students are not continuing because they are really struggling with mental health issues, particularly after COVID. I mean, they are just falling apart. No wonder they can't study and they can't keep going with what they're doing. So, that's a legitimate thought, but how do you bring it forward is what you want to do. And you can advocate for it, but then, it's, speaking to Carol and starting to say, shouldn't we do this? Well, let's get Mark in this too, and let's have this conversation. And Mark gets in as student affairs vice president and says, what are we doing with this? So that collective conversation, then the issue boils up if it's critical and you want to invest some resources in it as well. So
It seems to me the test is what do you expect Mark to do with either the question or the
Yeah.
statement you're making.
Mhm.
If it's casual conversation about here's what's on my heart, I'm just putting it out there. I
Yeah.
don't expect, if it's I need you to go do a full research on it,
Yeah.
that's the other side of the line. Or if it's I want you to pursue this.
right. And
then
these are
that's-
all
so I
board
think it's
processes and
expectation.
board interaction. But if a board member says something like that to Mark, he should tell Carol. He should say, I had this conversation with Laurie, and this is on her mind. Because Carol needs to know. And, should it go somewhere? Or here's my thought on it as well. So it's that ongoing open communication. It's communication and sending emails and newsletters and all that. But it's also this interpersonal communication that's a critical function within the board. But there is a process for bringing initiatives forward. So
And
that,
Mark ought to be able to respond with
Yeah.
almost a, what do you want me to do with this?
But
Yeah.
I mean, if there's ever a question that.
Now, I've
that's-
called Mark and say, hey, I met this person with Real Life Ministries. They have a side program that helps with truck drivers. And he'll go, great, give me the number, and he'll pass it along. And but he'll be right up. He goes, this is where I'm going to pass the information to. We'll follow up later. Oh, great, that sounds good. Let me go put this where it needs to go. But he'll tell you where it's going to follow up. Because things pop up all the time when you're meeting people and creating partnerships, but all
Yeah.
you just pass on the information. But that's all I'm doing is pass on the information, and
Yeah.
he does what he needs to do
Right.
with it.
I mean, there's a plethora of things that the community college can do. But that's why you have a mission statement, because that says, this is what we're supposed to do. And then you build around that is largely what you're trying to do as well. Yeah, because we used your example. Nothing personal, it was just a nice example that came out of that. So to wrap this piece up, on the right side, I had a couple of resources. One was the making of a community college trustee, and I'm not going to do, we don't have time to do that. Maybe later, but a colleague of mine, he was president at a community college in New York, Corning, for a number of years, and he retired. He's wrote this nice series, and it's fictional, but it's nice. But if you have the number 6, I'm going to, maybe sometime, I was going to do it, but it's a nice example of what we're just talking about, where somebody has an idea and they brought it to the board and the president was involved, and there was a little rub about the way it was handled, but maybe later. It was a nice little scenario, but we're going to keep moving on, and maybe we'll come back to that as well. But it creates a nice discussion about bringing things forward and having them. But also on the left, the right side, behind that is your policies, all right? So pull that up. It looks like this here. It's in your folder. Maybe you got it memorized, man. Pull that up. It looks like it's, yep, you got it. Mine's blue, but you got it. Sometimes these things, there it is, right there. There you go, man. And Ed, I'm going to tell you it's right. You got it. I know it is. Hang on now, I want you to have it.
Vision statement.
Yeah, keep going. Here, let me look at this. All right.
I saw it earlier, but that may have been days earlier.
I'm going
Bring
to,
extra pens.
shoot. Yep. Here you go. All right, you had an extra? All right, therein is the mystery. All right, so a lot of times these things we talk about are notions of process and where you're going. Like, it's really nice if it's in your policy manual, because then you can go back to saying, well, this is what we said. So I'm just going to review this for you quickly. So I pulled this off. Natalie shared it with me, and of course it's there, but Administrative Board of Regents, it says the governing body for Del Mar College is the Board of Regents, composed of 9 members who are elected for 6-year terms in accordance with state and federal statutes. Elections, then it goes on about elections. And the presiding officer is the chair. In accordance to bylaws, the college policy, and other applicable standards, the board performs an annual self-evaluation of its performance, which you're doing, what you just did, and we're going to go over it in a little bit. And the self-evaluation will incorporate criteria assessing the board operations and defining board effectiveness. All right. It's an interesting statement, and it says who you are and that there's elections and you're going to do an evaluation. All right. Skip past that a little bit to on the next page, midway, B2, 121. So this is just, I'm just doing this one because this is what we were talking about, you as individual board members. So your policy does kind of say what you should do. You attend meetings, all regular meetings. You work with other board members to establish effective board policies and to delegate authority for the administration of the college and the chief executive officer of the college. So that's what we just talked about. It's written there, and I guess maybe behind it on the link it may say more about it. But there is what you're saying you're doing. You make policy decisions only after full discussion at publicly held board meetings. So that's kind of what we were just talking about as well. Communicate with other board members and the CEO of the college expressions of public reaction to board policies and college programs. Become informed about current educational issues by individual study and through participation in programs, so self-education. Support the employment of those persons best qualified to serve as college staff and insist on a regular and impartial evaluation of all staff, and I'm sure Mark does that. Next page is take no private action that will compromise the board or administration and respect the confidentiality of information that is privileged. Always, remember always that the first and greatest concern must be the educational welfare of students. And last night, everybody talked about students. Engage in no activity that could be a conflict of interest. Refrain from using the board position for personal gain. And that's where Linda said, I'm just here to help the college. Bring about desired changes through legal and ethical procedures, upholding and enforcing all applicable statutes, regulations, court decisions pertaining to the community college, and work with other board members to establish effective policies and practices prohibiting unlawful discrimination, including conduct that can constitute sexual misconduct. So that's what your policy says. It covers quite a few of the things that we identified on the worksheets. But there's some others, and maybe some others being there. Then I'm just going to do, then it says what your president should do. And this is what we were talking about. And Linda said, I see a line there. So the CEO of the college is the chief executive and administrative officer, is responsible to the Board of Regents for the operation of the college and its programs. In fulfilling the duties of office, the CEO shall act within the framework of the college policy. So he's following what the policy the board does. The CEO has full power and authority, which power and authority are hereby delegated by the board, to manage, control, and operate the college, except to the extent that such authority requires law to be reversed to the board. So there's an exclusion there. But generally, manage and control such authority and responsibility of the CEO shall include, but not be limited to, and then it has a nice long list of things here. Working in the college district, advise and consult with the Board of Regents on management issues of concern. Inform the board as to problems, needs, and accomplishments. Develop as requested policies for consideration. Recommend policies on relevant matters for consideration to the Board of Regents. Work with the appropriate college personnel, it's on the next page, for developing and carrying out instructional and student programs. Work with the appropriate college personnel to develop the college budget, programs and budget. Work with personnel to seek proper care of college facilities. Develop and implement appropriate salary and wage systems, working with personnel in that regard. Develop appropriate faculty administrative participation, personnel and salary. See to the appropriate representation in the institution in relationships with accreditation, government, education, professional organizations, and employ faculty and other employees in the district. So that's what, we just talked about the general pieces, and we're close, but that's what your policy manual says. And it's pretty clear. It's there in a lot of ways in what it has to help define that role, your role and the role of the president. And then it's an operational piece that comes with it as well. Time out. Time to go. Thank you very much. Let's take our 15-minute break, and then I think we go into executive session on the piece.
The board is going to enter into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074 regarding the employment evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, including board self-evaluation and regent duties, and under Texas Government Code 551.071 regarding pending or contemplated litigation or a settlement offer with possible discussion and action in open session, and the seeking of legal advice from counsel on pending legal or contemplated matters or claims with possible discussion and action in open session. The time is 10:46 a.m. The board has come out of closed session at 1:11 p.m. There is no action to be taken. We will continue with our retreat. Dr. Ebersol?
All right. Well, we've thought about a lot today, and so particularly the last session and even before that as well. So our goal 4 is for you as a board to be thinking about the future of Del Mar College. So I have worksheet number 5. So we go to those worksheets, and also included in there is this sheet that we received from the staff about generally information about population trends, economic trends, school system, and higher education in the region. Looks like it's kind of got this look to it. You got it there. And I think you've seen this.
I know I have it, I've seen it.
Yeah, I saw it. Yep, you got it. You got it, Mark. Yes. Have you all, has this been reviewed with you? This whole document, have you reviewed it? No? Mm-hmm. Are there any particular highlights in it that we should know, since they haven't seen it?
And you'll probably have to go to the table and speak
Yeah.
into that
Just,
microphone.
well, okay, so it's a lot of small details. So if you want to just tell us quickly about what you see as some of the trends there, and then what we're going to do is the three of you are going to use that flip chart. You're going to use that flip chart, and you're going to use that one. And you're going to brainstorm where the college will be in 3 to 5 years. But just run through some of the highlights.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
This information was provided to us by Facilities Programming, and of course, they're the company with Doug Lowe, many of you have met at different times, and where we've asked for a demographic analysis of our different markets. And what you have on this page is a comparison of two major sections. One deals with our service area, and the other separates out our taxing district. And that is relevant from the standpoint, of course, as y'all all know, our taxing district is much smaller than our entire service area. So when you look at our population, it's segmented into who is within our taxing district versus who is within our service area. So that is relevant when you look at the two population pie charts in the upper left-hand corner. Of course, that is the population by age cohort, and again, looking by age classifications within our service area, and then also within, compared to our taxing district. What's relevant is that within our MSA, or our service area, which remember our service area is Nueces County, Aransas County, San Patricio County, Kennedy County, and parts of Clayburgh County. That is our, by state statute, our service area. Our taxing district is primarily the city of Corpus Christi and the 5 school districts. And most recently, since the city of Corpus Christi took in pieces of San Patricio County, we now have a sliver of land in San Patricio County, which will come onto the tax rolls this year. Several of y'all were in that those meetings too. Now that's not on this sheet, but that I think is very relevant as we start talking about the comparison of taxing district to service area. The number that is shown in population within our service area is right under 500,000. This data is a little bit out of date, and it shows 420,000 approximately within our service area, which with the newest census is more closely approaching 500,000. So we're an MSA, or a service area, of approximately 500,000 people that we serve as an institution. Now within our taxing district, it's approximately 330,000, 340,000 in the latest census. So that is smaller. Additionally, on this page, you have by age group. It breaks it into, of course, 16 to 64 is more of our target age group, and it shows the different populations by that group. And you can see those trends there. The race and ethnicity, most of us are aware that we're predominantly Hispanic, approximately 66 to 70% of our population. And Del Mar College trends right along with that as far as the students that we serve. So we closely represent by ethnicity the makeup of our community as to the college. And I think that's something we can be proud of. And so that's really what this chart is showing as to who we serve and how. And as you can see, I think one of the things that's very relevant, if you look at the age group, and then also age by educational attainment, and I realize that's small print, your high school degree or equivalent is the largest population in our service area. So almost 30%, 29.6% is a high school degree or equivalent. And so as you look at that age group coming on up within our next future, within our future years, that's very relevant as to who we will approach, who will attain. So the high school graduates and then some college is much less. And of course in our advanced studies. Within this, what we're not showing here today though is if you compared us to the rest of the state, it's fair to say that we have a lesser group, larger population with lower college attainment, with lower educational attainment. Educational attainment is a challenge for our region as compared to the state as a whole. I think that's basically the takeaways from this page. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
What about the economic development piece?
Okay. Y'all have given, this one right here?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. On page, it's number page 8, which is a map. And we've shown this map in a variety of ways. And I know that you have my presentation that was given to the board in June. And that was much more in depth, and it basically showed a very similar map. And it showed where the economic development, right now we're tracking at over $52 billion in economic development in the industry basically within our service area, not within our taxing district. And I think that's real relevant when you compare those two charts. That it's our service area, primarily San Patricio County, where the largest volume of capital investment is taking place. Cheniere Energy has invested approximately right under $15 billion in the last 3 to 5 years. You have Gulf Coast Growth Ventures, which is ExxonMobil and SABIC, which is right under $9 billion. And of course, Steel Dynamics, which started out at $1.2 billion, but by the time you add all the secondary businesses, it'll be another $3 to $5 billion. And then along with that, which really is not on here yet, but ancillarily, I'm already working with home builders, which will be very relevant to us as an institution, where your nationally recognized home builders are coming in and buying up 2,000 and 3,000 acre tracts of land in San Patricio County, where homes will be built to service the jobs that are coming. So when you look at population growth, it's going to happen, job growth is going to happen in San Patricio County. Right now, there's not housing for anybody. There's not enough housing, period. However, with what's being built and developed, there will be housing within the next few years if the developers do what they say they're going to do. And it's going to take place west of Portland, around Gregory, and then out towards Sinton. There's plots of tracts of 1,000 houses, 800 houses being already platted. So as you look at the growth, we've experienced it on the south side of Corpus Christi, extreme growth. You're fixing to see the same thing in the next 5 to 10 years in San Patricio County. And so there's approximately another $20 billion that's coming, that's in the works, an expansion that would feed in addition to this $52 billion in investment that's occurred. One of the biggest challenges that's happened to us, though, was the freeze. And what happened with ERCOT and the challenge of whether or not the state of Texas can supply a steady source of power. At that point in time, I was told dissuade approximately 3 large capital investors coming into the area, that they were waiting until the state of Texas got power under control. that they had to have a proven source of electrical power. So there are state issues that are out of our control that could impact, if you're talking about challenges, that can directly impact the continued growth that expansion is coming. So if you're looking at advantages and challenges, right now that's part of it. Many people may not be aware too is that of course the environmental piece is always important, and clean air and our air quality attainment is critical, and so is water. And water access, the ability to get water, clean water, and then also to keep our water clean. And the EPA has already challenged the state of Texas on clean air and clean water as to whether or not they're going to take over the power from the state. So that's where I see the challenges in our economic growth. However, it's huge as to what's happening right now. The state, though, as a region, our population grew approximately 3% over the last few years, where the state grew at 18%. Our region grew at approximately 30% population growth, and the state grew at right over 18%. So you have what Dr. Escamilla referred to as the Golden Triangle, which is San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Houston, is the largest population growth, of course, with the big companies coming in there. However, some of the steel for the Teslas or steel for different cars are being manufactured here. So there is ancillary work that's going to take place within our region that will feed some of the work, the investment that is going on outside of Austin and San Antonio. Okay, anything else?
Look at that, on that sheet then too, it was the economic, and then that was it. I thought there was one other area, but. Major industries, but you've addressed that pretty much at this point too.
I did.
Okay.
I think the major sectors, of course, is always oil and gas related. We as an area, though, of course, have focused on the processing side, which is going into feedstock for steel, petrochemical, and LNG. I do want to share one more comment.
Yes, go ahead.
I heard Dr. Murdoch speak about a week ago, and he made this statement, and I wanted to get a copy of it, but he made a statement that the most significant world socioeconomic impact is going on right now between the Permian Basin to the coastal bend. And he said that is the production of natural gas that is flowing out of the Permian Basin, West Texas, down to the coastal bend in our pipelines, if you extrapolate that. And of course, our Port of Corpus Christi is now #1 in the United States as far as export, as far as revenue, and #3 as far as exportation. What he's saying, though, is why it has more socio-political impact is that natural gas being turned into liquid natural gas, LNG, which is happening in San Patricio County and basically Brownsville and at the state border between Texas and Louisiana right now. That exportation, once it goes out, will impact the power base for Russia. That the power base for Russia right now is to provide heating fuel for Northern Europe and Eastern Europe, okay? So once we can do that through LNG, which we're doing right now, Cheniere Energy is a great example, then that will make a political shift worldwide. And what's coming out of the Permian Basin right now is what's going to be fueling that change. So we will be the epicenter for a lot of change, great change that's happening socio-politically throughout the whole world.
Run through it one more time, the education attainment.
Our lower, we as a state, of course, as a region, if y'all look on educational attainment on page 5, If you look at the column that says some college or degree, and I'm looking at the top chart at, what's that, 23.6%. And then a high school degree or equivalent is 29.6%. That's the largest group, is just high school. But the opportunity for us then is to capture that group and to bring them in for advanced degrees. The challenge, though, no high school at 17%, that's a very high number. No high school. Your associate's degree at 8.1%, your bachelor's degree at 13.9%, and a graduate degree at 7.9%. If you compare those numbers statewide, and we don't have that chart, but I can assure you our numbers are much lower when you look at advanced education or just educational attainment. We as a region are lower in every category. Of course, that plugs into our other challenges and why we're so important as an institution.
All right,
I got it?
thank you.
You're welcome.
It was perfect. All right,
Thank you,
so,
Lenore, for letting us put you on the spot.
yeah, she did great. And your timing was perfect.
Rudy has a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
There's a period of time that we'll get no tax revenue until 2032 or something like that. So we can't, from a revenue standpoint, we can't rely on
That-
that tax base.
Well, that sliver is not under a tax abatement. The sliver, we will receive taxes on that sliver. What was left is all we received that did not enter into, with the city of Corpus Christi, they did not enter into industrial zones. So we don't have those. Those were de-annexed by the city. What was not de-annexed is a sliver that goes from Nueces Bay almost to Highway 35 and takes in a piece of OxyChem. If you think of it that way, it goes straight up. That we begin taxing this year because it's not part of an industrial tax zone or an industrial zone. Well, there's some OxyChem property. Mhm. So we will receive some tax dollars out of San Patricio County this year. Yes, sir.
All right, your last exercise today, there's three of you, this group, and over there, what are the 4 or 5 major initiatives for Del Mar in the next 5 years? What should be the 4, you heard some good data, and what should be the 4 or 5 primary initiatives for the institution in the next 4 or 5 years? You can put them on a flip chart if you want, or write them down, all right? And you know, this is just good thoughts. That's good. Right, exactly. Yes. Mm-hmm. Good. Document. Go ahead.
Then we had guided pathways, this has to, well, we got the students in, my perception anyway, is that the longer they take to get their degree, the more likely it is they're not going to get further certification. And so the better we can do at keeping them focused on getting the courses that they need to finish, the better it's serving.
All right, so that's a focus for the years. I know Mark and his group are really working hard to do that, but keep that going as they do, all right?
Outreach to the outside taxing district, service district. We've noticed based on Lenora's presentation and just anecdotally, we're going to have a lot of growth.
All right.
And as a consequence, probably a lot of need outside of our taxing district.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe to the point where there might be a campus out there.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
But you certainly can't sell that to the
Whew. But anyhow, right, but you know, that's what you're thinking. Exactly, right, exactly. It's a new population to serve.
Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Are just generally selling the community outside of the tax
Mm-hmm.
for community college, and potentially maybe bringing them into the tax.
All right.
If we can establish a lot of relevant courses.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Maximize use of physical assets. Counterpoint to what I just said about building a new campus is we built a new campus and we've got buildings and we need to be maximizing those buildings.
Mm-hmm.
We can't have empty buildings overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
Good focus. Mm-hmm.
community outreach in general.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make the community aware of what we do? How do we convince the community of marketing academic students?
Mm-hmm.
How much less expensive it is and what a good education they get from the preliminary courses. Those people looking for certification who might get tempted by private institutions that are charging too much for something they can get here.
Mm-hmm.
Just in general, making sure the community understands the outstanding services that the college provides to the entire community.
All right. Continue that focus.
I would point out, we did have an editor on our team. To make sure you spell correctly. Who caught a misspelling. It was good to have a journalist.
All right. This guy, group, what do you have here?
So, this is not in order of
Okay.
priority, because we kind of were a little bit all over the place, but what we started with was around the growth in industry and process technology and all of our technical programs, to be able to expand those based on the needs. So as those, and we know the staff is doing that, so it's not that we're saying do something that we're not doing, but we recognize the emphasis on our technical programs and how we can expand those based on needs. The next one was around outreach to the 45%. What struck us was when you're talking about people with high school graduation and no college, or people with some college but no associate's degree who haven't finished anything, that 40 or 45% of people out there are a prime target. And they're going to be in various segments. This is 18 to 64-year-olds. So there might be some 20-year-olds who need some direction in their life. There might be some 20-year-olds who have a few college hours, or maybe 6 hours shy of their associate's degree, and need their friend, Mr. Palacios, to come back and kick them and make them finish their coursework.
Yeah.
But the point is, inside of that 45% are some very specific market segments that we could be marketing to.
Yeah.
So that we need to really understand if we can define, if we got, 10% of that group, if we got 15% of that group, would be huge, huge numbers.
Right.
But 2 or 3, 4, 5%. I mean, what's an appropriate number? How can we identify who those potential students are. And I think students who have some college but no degree ought to be, quite frankly, a priority. But
Yeah.
we'll let staff look at that, but we think and what resources would it take to really understand who those folks are and how to get to them. And that led us into a discussion about our marketing efforts. How do we, what are the metrics around our current marketing efforts, and do we understand what really is effective to different market segments and what's not? So are those resources being deployed effectively, and are we seeing the numbers as a result of those marketing efforts? If not, should they be deployed somewhere else? And then kind of wrapped in both of those together was around admissions and recruitment personnel and resources. Are there resource needs to really ramp up, again, that pipeline of students into the college? And that's a resource and priorities question that is a board question. So how do we have that discussion? And then lastly, this came actually out of the folks that attended the Board of Trustees Institute in September. One of the conversations at the end around our board action plan was around student engagement and the onboarding or orientation of students. When we do get them here, do we have a mandatory orientation? Do we have intrusive services, not waiting for them to ask for help, but using indicators, Civitas and others, to help us provide intrusive services to make sure that students are getting the support that they need to continue?
All right.
So, one of the things that I did share with the group that Mark, we might want to talk about are the changes in like the FAFSA requirement for high school seniors now, and how we might be able to wrap around scholarship opportunities, obviously intrusive financial aid potentially, but how are we going to use that change where FAFSA is now required of high school seniors, and how are we going to capitalize on that as a community college, finding out students who might be eligible for Pell, et cetera. So how do we make sure that we are capitalizing on that opportunity as well? So a lot wrapped into student programs and bringing students to the college.
Marketing and strong outreach to some populations is what you have there. All right, go ahead. All right.
The joint effort here, we talked about Santa Lucia County having a presence there, and that was sort of carefully chosen
Is that
word.
one of those districts you're
It doesn't
talking
say
about?
buildings, it doesn't say.
Yeah,
It says presence in whatever form that needs to make to take advantage of, or to service those people who are in need of that. Diversity, inclusivity is on there also.
Yep.
Expanding the tax base, there are going to be those who are in need. They may as well be in that tax base.
So you mean increasing the diversity of the student population? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I went over it really quickly. Actually, that was a very broad term, not just
Yeah.
having a more diverse population of students, or not necessarily just faculty, but it means a curriculum that's teaching diversity.
Oh, okay.
It means in all respects that we become that welcoming, not just racial, LGBTQ, age, whatever we need to do. Even beyond access.
Right.
Access, they are welcome.
Okay.
Tax base, we talked about having a variety or being flexible with modes of instruction. Do we pivot into more online? Do we do hybrids? Or we've got kids who are coming off of it, having been taught differently. Schools, what's going to be engaged on.
All right.
Without saying
Yeah,
what that mode
and
of
also
instruction
making
is.
sure the staff has the best training on delivering new types of instruction. So, they got thrown into virtual, they got thrown into
Right.
Zoom and all, and some of them weren't really used to it. Make sure that we have the strongest training for that delivery to
Right.
still be able to capture those students.
All right.
Increasing enrollment.
Yeah.
With all these other
That captures a lot of this, what is right. And a lot of things that Mark's been talking about too, in terms of different students, continuing ed students and others is,
We didn't slice that into, retaining and recruiting. It's been
yeah.
two somewhat different things, obviously overlapping, but we need to address both.
It's a really a good goal, and instead of just the acceptance of a decline in enrollment, it's what can we do different? Because as we've said a couple times, a regular student base isn't going to be there for a while again. So they'll have to find some other ways of retaining and attracting different populations.
And I think that's important, that that's not just getting more tuition dollars.
Yeah.
We've got a big population out there that needs to be in these walls or on our Zoom
Mhm.
calls or whatever it is. And so
Mhm.
if we really are gonna be the community's college,
Right.
we need to have them here getting
Mhm.
degrees or certifications or whatever form they're getting. And then we've got to one more with
Yeah.
a concern about making sure that our programming is cost efficient, that each one of the programs we've got curriculum would be there.
Mhm.
My point was that's complicated. I think it's very complicated. It's not just an equation where you
Right.
how many students, how many teachers. Well, that number doesn't work.
Right.
It's much more complicated than that. But we
Mhm.
make sure that we're having the right programs that are cost effective and are actually getting a benefit to the students.
Nice. Good. Good future stuff. All right, so today we went through a lot. And about being a board, your assessment, talking about future in a lot of different ways that we did. And so I think we accomplished those first 4 goals that we talked about. Tomorrow, it's your board goals. As Carol was saying, make sure we do that. And then we're going to talk about, I forget the last part. Oh, I know, being a high-performing board is where we'll go with that piece as well. And there we go. You have any last words for today? Oh, what time is it? Is it 2 o'clock?
It's 2, we were gonna end at 3, but we're.
Oh, 2 o'clock, right. All right.
My only, I would like us maybe tomorrow morning to be able to talk about these and help either group them together in some broad categories
Mhm.
for staff to consider or for us to
Okay.
prioritize in some way.
Mhm.
Because while they're not drastically different,
Mhm.
I think there does need to be some
Okay.
potential direction coming out of the board so that staff isn't going, okay, now we have, 12 new things to do.
Right.
Well, let's have a discussion on how we might approach those.
Okay. Right.
Also thinking, sort of saying, I don't think that these priorities, certainly not most of them, priorities suggest that we don't think staff is already working on all these things.
Mhm.
And
Right.
suggest, and I don't want to go unrecognized. I mean, I hear the ads, and I see the outreach that we are doing to the community, and I see the efforts on both courts. We hear that our student population reflects the community population. So it does appear as though staff has done an awful lot of tremendous work on these priorities. We're just recognizing that these are still priorities for us.
And see them as the future. Things that are continuing for the future. Mark, you have any thoughts?
Just that my team members, on both sides of me over here, are very familiar with the goals that are set forth to some degree. Some of them have long histories, and we would like to refresh that information as the board sees fit. But I think, kind of just summarizing today's, last night's and today's conversations, we're in a much different place, just very quickly. I think, or at least the opportunity is presenting itself for us to be in a different place. How about that? I think we can build on these things. We were anticipating these kind of goals coming from this board. Lenore and I, and John and I, Christina, and we're talking about how we're going to need to pivot for these goals. We know we had to reinvent ourselves, and the time is now. Y'all are adding fuel to that fire, if you will, and we will need to, once the information out of this meeting or these meetings, if there's another one, solidifies, we will need to pivot because we're still positioned for Del Mar of the past, in just the recent past.
Mhm.
But we will need to pivot.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about that. And as recently as yesterday, getting the BSN approved, we're now a 4-year degree institution. We're a level 2 4-year degree granting institution, albeit one program. Things are changing, and so we must be ready.
Cool. In that packet too is equity action agenda that has some nice things you're thinking about, the diversity. And maybe we'll look at that a little bit tomorrow to make sure you see that as well. So, all right, been a good day, and I guess we're finished, and we'll see you tomorrow at 8:30. So.
All right,
or
with
8
that,
o'clock.
then this portion of the board meeting is adjourned at 2:04 PM.